Leaping.
11 drummers drumming.
10 ladies dancing. That's the problem. You don't have a choice.
One thing I didn't do was...
It don't matter. The fact that you got to start the sentence with the only thing I didn't do. Does he not get that? The only thing I didn't do. That's the point.
Yeah.
Get out, man.
Yeah, I mean, I argue because she never give me credit for what I
didn't.
Okay.
What is... how my journey with being a parent evolved, I would have never even guessed that. I would have never said that was going to happen a day in my life where I would not enjoy being married, where I would not enjoy being a mother.
We're at my crib, just chilling. We're gonna let y'all see this 12 days of Christmas.
You know, we tried real hard to do this just right, but no, they wouldn't let us. They just wouldn't let us. We wanted this to be perfect, but you know. Hey. Delphi. Delphi.
Make a face at Delphi.
If you're looking for a secure haven within the literary world, you found the perfect organization. Let's make magic together. Our space is specifically designed for African American authors who are passionate about their writings of films and books. It's a platform to stay informed about industry developments. And on Patreon, we'll share exclusive content, valuable resources, and engaging discussions and masterclasses on various subjects, ranging from film and publishing industry trends to wellness and business tips. So if you're ready to dive into this exciting community, become a member now. Welcome to our literary haven where creativity knows no bounds. Let's make magic together.
Hey everybody, happy Sunday. And if you see my lovely face, that means it is 4th Sunday and this is in creative color. So my name is Jasmine Bunchman now and forever to be known as your fave, Jazzonfire. And I am so excited, y'all, to chat with y'all for another Sunday craft chat. So without further ado, I'm gonna hop right on in. We've got an amazing guest and I'm just gonna bring her on in. We have Arial Robinson with us today, y'all. Arial, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to dive in today.
Of course, of course. So to give y'all a little bit, because one thing about it, my guests, them bios are always going to be stacked. Their resumes are always going to be stacked. So Arial is a 3-time self-published author of the modern day Black alphabet book and Black Hair Care in Color. And now what we're here to talk about today is Songs from the Girls Room. So Arial is a multidisciplinary artist from Charlotte, North Carolina. So come on, North Carolina, stand up. A 2023 graduate of North Carolina A&T State University. So Aggie, stand up. And she has a BS in multimedia journalism, currently a full-time artist, a director of the Solar Lab, a digital creative laboratory she created to produce physical artworks and facilitate conversations that inspire and educate Black creators. Some of her accomplishments, to name a few, because there are plenty, include being a 2019 Forbes 30 Under 30 Scholar, being named 2021 HBCU Creative of the Year, being a part of EXO Nicole's 2024 It Girl 100 list, as well as designing the Nike and Cat Dunks and the Greensboro Swarm HBCU night jersey. Whew. She's had her work featured by New York Magazine, Business Insider, Essence Magazine, Days, and more. And so, y'all, we are so honored and privileged to be here with Arial. So, Arial, oh my goodness, that is a mouthful.
I know, the pleasure really is all mine. I'm super excited to be able to talk with you and this organization. I'm a huge fan. So, yeah, no, the pleasure really is all mine.
I'm excited. So before we dive in, like I tell y'all, it's Sunday, and I know y'all went to church this morning, but we're gonna take it to church just a little bit more, because I would be remiss without giving the ultimate creator his due praise. So if we can quickly go to the Father in prayer, and then we're gonna hop right in and chat with Arial. All right, so precious Father, you are the ultimate creator, the blueprint, and we thank you for your creative grace and that it runs through our veins. God, we pray that this conversation will be fruitful. Holy Spirit, we pray that whoever's listening, God, whether it's 1 or 1 million, God, they'll hear something that inspires them, God, because people are hungry, and whether that's to create or for the creator, we just pray that, Lord, this conversation falls on ears of whoever needs to hear it. And whether, like I said, that's 1 or 1 million, we will give you the praise. In your mighty name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So I know I gave them a rundown of who you are, all the things, and you are a maker of many things, which is right. You're an author, a photographer, a model, a designer, a writer, a curator, a creator. But who are you when you're not creating?
I mean, I'm trying to think because I create a lot all the time, and it's something that I really enjoy doing. Even though it is a job, it doesn't always feel like a job. But when I'm not, creating things, I'm just Ariel. I'm just watching TV or working out or hanging with my friends and just chilling out.
I love that. I think we always ask, as creators, whatever we do, sometimes we let that title kind of define who we are. And so I always like to ask, like, who are you when you're not creating? Who are you aside from the art? So I guess along the same lines of that, people always ask you about the creative, I'm sure. So what's something that you wish people knew about you, or something that you wish they asked you about that, like, maybe people don't know?
That's a really good question because I'm like, what would I want people to ask me about? I just wish people would like ask my opinion on things outside of the work I do. Like I would say I am a very opinionated person, but it's also nice to just have a stance and an understanding of what's going on in pop culture, in the world, in my interests. So I think it would be nice if a lot of my conversations outside of the work were centered around like my morals, my values, my upbringings, the things I like to consume as opposed to the things I like to create. Because
That's good.
to answer your question, your original question, I'm like, I'm a sister. I have younger siblings. I have an older sibling. I'm a cousin. I'm a woman, so all of these things outside of what I can produce. So I guess that would be nice to have conversations that weren't so much about what I do and more about like what interests me, what angers me, what makes me cry, what makes me happy, laugh, and all those things.
I absolutely love that. That's beautiful. And I think one thing that I guess people grab from our work that we create is that sometimes they see those opinions, they see those values, they see the things that we love, we treasure in those pieces of art that we create. And so to get right into it, Songs from the Girls Room, your newest release, your newest project. And I loved how I was all on your site doing my research, and I found this like blurb, right? And I'm going to read it. So it says, his book is not just a collection of words, but a mirror of the music that lathered my girls' room with love when I needed it most. This book leverages symbols and sound effects through type to illustrate the musical listening experience while examining the ever-changing concept of identity through the Black feminine lens. First of all, I love poetry. I love words. So like beautiful, off rip. Like if I see this, I'm definitely going to buy that book. And I was, privileged enough to actually read it beforehand. So y'all got to go get y'all's. Tell us, what was the exact moment of inspiration where you were like, boom, this is a book. Let's do it.
Well, I would say, so I've been writing music for years and years and just like keeping it in my phone notes and in like notebooks. And so last summer I was sitting down and I was like, okay, I'm ready to create another large body of work, but I'm not sure exactly what it will be. And so I went back to 10 poems that I had written the summer of 2022. I was going through a lot. And so I just had these really, really strong feelings. And at the time, I didn't realize that they were free verse poems. It was just me kind of writing down what was going on with me. And so I put them on the soillab.com. It was like a digital exhibition and it was called The Girls Room because I don't know, I just wanted to call it that. And so with those 10 poems, I had pictures of like me, my mom, my sisters, the women in my life. And so a year later in the summer of 2023, I'm like, I want to use these poems again. Like, I don't think this is enough. I'm not like ready to just close this out. And so at first I was like, maybe I could write a novel and it starts off with one of these poems. And then I take one of the themes from the poems to create a novel. But I just kept running into these roadblocks and I'm like, it's just not enough. And so then I was like, okay, well, I got these poems. Why not just create a poetry collection? So from those free verse poems, I went back to my very vast archive of songs. And I was like, okay, let's pull some of these songs because there are very similar themes about just womanhood and girlhood and coming of age, along with the poems that I had written in the summer of 2022. And I spent the bulk of the writing from last summer to this spring getting it all together. But it was last summer where I was like, okay, I want to make a book. And I just happened to land in a poetry book. And yeah, the rest is kind of history.
Wow. And you say vast collection indeed, because Songs from the Girls Room is 56 pieces. And I was going to ask that, how did they ended up coming together? Like, was it an intentional curation of piece in like on theme, or did you have a ton of these and you were like, oh, this is tea. This is a poetry book. So it was beautiful to see how that kind of came together. So I know you said you had 10. From there, you kind of just gathered and collected the rest.
Yeah, so it was like I had those 10, and then I don't remember how many songs I chose because I was literally like going back and being like, oh, I'll listen to have some demos recorded. So I would listen to some songs and be like, oh, I want this to be put in there. And then a lot of it was me just writing down different themes I wanted to hit on and then writing poems from there. So like 35, like 20 to 35 of them were written in the past year. And it was me saying like, hey, I want to talk about like sisterhood in the bathroom. How are we going to talk about that? And then like sitting down. And then I also had a list of different types of poems so that I could reference, like maybe I want to write a sonnet and I have this theme. Let's write a sonnet about the bonnet, or like, let's write, this free verse poem about this. And so it really was just me kind of connecting the dots, but like no day looked the same. Some days I was writing a lot, and then other days I might not be writing a lot. And then I also lived in New York, so I'd be on the train and I might be listening to something or reading something. Like I was reading Nikki Giovanni's book, Love Poems, and just seeing how she kind of framed it and the different ways the words could show up on the page. And so from there, I just kind of started to piece everything together. But it was a very chaotic process, not gonna lie. Like it was very chaotic all over the place, where like some days I would have like half of a poem written and then go to this and have another half and be like, okay, I'm done with this. We'll put this to the side. Or like, oh, let me go back to that and read this and be like, oh no, I want to change this. So it was a pretty chaotic process, not going to lie, but it's actually 59 poems. And my goal was to have 50. And I just happened to have 9 more than what my goal was. And so I was like, okay, this is good. Like, I don't want to add any more, because I felt like once I sequenced them together that it told a complete story for me.
For sure, for sure. And I feel like reading it, I was able to see that I was able to follow along on the journey. And I know you mentioned like some of the pieces that you were reading that you kind of drew inspiration from. What do you think, would you say you draw your inspiration from? And I know this could be like many places. This could be different avenues. What would yours look like?
I say I draw a lot of inspiration from music. That's why that musical theme that's there, because even though it is a poetry book, and it probably would make more sense if I was like, oh yeah, these are the 5 poets that I love and look to, and this is where the book came from. But in all honesty, it really came from like music writing. And because a lot of these songwriters are poets and they are writing poetry, whether they want to admit it or not. And so for me, music just plays a really big part in my artistry. And so, yeah, like Solange, for example, she's one of my favorite multidisciplinary artists. And so she has an interlude called Can I Hold the Mic? And so that, like hearing that interlude, and it is poetry. If you look at the lyrics, like it's literally a poem. And so that was a big inspiration for me, because I listen to it all the time. I know it by heart. And I was like, okay, I want to create something like this, but I don't want it to be a musical album. I want it to be something that people can hear in their own voices, and they can read back to themselves, and they can create their own rhythm to it, as opposed to me giving them that musical production.
Oh, I love that. And I can sense that throughout. I remember in my research seeing that you did write songs, but I definitely saw that in a couple of them. I was like, oh, this to a beat. This is a diss track. Like,
I'm weak.
That's who. So I know a lot of people always ask about, what the easiest, what was the favorite piece, or what was like, the one that you really enjoyed writing. But I want the tea. Like, what do you think was the hardest piece to write in this like entire collection?
Oh, that's a really, really great question. I would say, let me think for a second, the hardest one, because there were a lot of them where I was really getting stuck up on like whether or not, like how to take it or where to go with it. But I would say the hardest out of all of them was probably, I don't know. That's such a good question. I would say, okay, the one that was hardest for me was definitely the poem Her Way. And it's because I'm telling a story about an interaction that I had with my great grandmother, like months before she passed away. And so like recalling that moment, thinking about her existence, thinking about how grateful I was to be able to spend those last few moments with her. That was really hard for me because I knew how to tell the story, but it was like getting the words on the paper that I just kept getting like really chewed up with. So I'll say that one was probably the hardest, even though like the actual writing of it wasn't hard. It was more about like spitting those emotions and those feelings out and being like, okay, this was a person that existed and they existed in like full for me. But at the same time, I'm now in my young womanhood and I don't get to have those conversations with her. And it would be really nice if I could sit down and say like, hey, when you were my age and you were doing these things, like, could you give me some advice? I don't get to do that. And so I would say that was definitely the hardest, even though there were some other ones that were challenging in terms of like technique or just like more mechanically they were hard, but that one emotionally it was like, okay, because it's so personal and it's something that I'm like not only putting out on a paper, but putting out on a paper to share with other people. And they're going to ask me about it. And I've got to be strong enough to like be able to talk about that poem and the interaction and like those feelings that are very real, you know?
For sure. And I think that's probably always like one of the hardest parts of writing any story, especially when it's tailored or based on stories that are true to us or personal to us. Figuring out how exactly to reach back into those feelings without, you know, overdoing it and kind of balancing that line between, oh, let's not dig up old trauma and, you know, digging, but also like, this is like, somebody needs to hear this. Somebody else is struggling with the same thing in my story. They're going to see themselves in it. So that's so beautiful. I love that. I know you mentioned like the mechanics and everything of it. And do you actually have a copy? I meant to ask, do you have a copy like with you on, you could just kind of flash at them? If not, it's totally fine.
Not in front of me, but like I could get up and go get it.
That's okay. So essentially, and you'll see it when you buy it because they're gonna go run to the website and they're gonna go purchase it. But essentially, the aesthetic is of that of a CD player, right?
Yes.
And so I want you to take us through the artistic direction because you're only 23, so you could have gone with like the iPod, the MP3 player. We could have gone OG iTunes if you wanted to,
Right.
But like, why the CD player?
Yeah. So I chose the CD player because that was the first physical piece of like music listening that I could have for myself. So like growing up, I'm the second of 4 children. I have a lot of cousins. I have uncles. I will always be at my grandma's house. And so before the CD player, it was us on the computer or watching 106 in Park. And though I love those experiences, I wanted to capture what it was like to finally have music for myself and put my CD player, or not my CD, but my CD in my CD player and have it and listen to that music and have it for my own. And so I just remember getting my CD player and being able to go into the bathroom and close the door for a quick little second and put my headphones in and listen to, you know, Destiny's Child and Usher and Khalees and all of these artists that were Black and creating music at the time. And so I wanted to capture that, but I wanted to do it in a way that basically I was now giving my CD player over to my audience. So when you hold the book in your hand, you're holding my CD player that's already preloaded with the songs that I want you to listen to. And so from there, you're able to take away what you want from it. So like when you open up the book, you'll see the CD being put in the CD player, and then it says like open to close, and then it starts at 00, and there are different like symbols that show like rewind or fast forward or play. And basically it's like in a book version, if you had the CD that I burned for you and it was all of my songs, but you're going to take what you need away from it. So if you decide track 6 not really for you, you can skip track 6. Or if you decide I only want to listen to track 27, you can keep playing it over and over again. And so I wanted to do that specifically because it was just that first time. And this is my first time putting out a poetry book. And so I'm like, okay, how do we go to that origin, but bring it into the present?
Yeah. And that's felt throughout the book. I know when you were saying there was some rewinds, because there was some moments where I was like, hold on, we're going to have to run track number 17 back, or we're going to have to do this one again. So I love that. I feel like it was very, like you said, it was your first poetry book, but you came out with a bang. Like nobody's making poetry books that are like masterpieces. They're these whole creative masterpieces. So kudos to you for that. And once y'all actually have it in your hands, I'm telling you, like truly having it, seeing the artwork, seeing the direction, and the artistic direction, truly unmatched. So super excited for the folks to see it. I think I want to dive into it a little bit. So there were some things that I just noticed that I just thought were genius, of course. And so there were thoughts that were incorporated that are like little interludes. And so I want to know about these because specifically thought 39.
About 39. Okay.
I've got a bad habit of coating my nose with I don't know. And I
Yeah.
feel like as a Black woman, as a fellow creative, we do this so much. Like we absolutely say, you know what, I don't know. Like we'll explain ourselves, give this full, like devoted thesis. Everything makes sense. It's all lined out. And then we're like, but I don't know. What do you think? Like, I want to know more about that one. And then, cause like, we know exactly what we're talking about. We mean what we said, what we mean. We know what we mean. And I feel like that's just kind of like a layer of imposter syndrome. And like personally for you, speaking on the thoughts that you incorporated throughout the book, but also the idea of imposter syndrome. How do you combat that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So with that specifically, I was having a conversation with someone who was asking me questions. Like we were literally texting, and I did that same thing where I like gave this whole full spiel of something I absolutely knew, but I said like I don't know, because I didn't want to come off as like doing too much or being a diva or being too like what is it, like overpowering. And it's like, no, like I need to stand completely in that. And so that was just a thought that I had, and I didn't want it to be where I was telling my audience like, oh no, you guys should do this. I just wanted to point it out. And so whoever, if they're feeling that same thing, hopefully they'll point it out, or they'll point it out on themselves, and they'll be able to figure out how they want to combat it. But for me, imposter syndrome is something I deal with every single day, even right now, especially because I'm only like a year and a half post grad. And so I'm trying to figure out, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How am I going to make money? How am I going to sustain myself? But at the same time, it's like, I believe so strongly in my capabilities and my artistry, my words, my writing, all these things. And so it's like trying to find that balance. And really, it's about just like when I get in the shower and I take my deep breaths and I tell myself like, hey, you didn't accomplish these things by yourself, but you also didn't do them like they didn't happen for no reason, you know? And so like you put in that work paired with other things with my community, but it's like, I'm supposed to be here for a reason. And if I wasn't supposed to be here, I wouldn't be here. And so for me, it's just a continuous effort of being surrounded by people that are going to be there for me when I need that help, but also just looking in the mirror and telling myself like, girl, you got this. You know, you can do this. And if you can't do it, God in the universe is going to take care of it. It's all taken care of. You just have to believe that. And I have like really bad anxiety. So yeah, it's just about like continuously showing up for myself, allowing myself grace to like fall apart and then put myself back together. But yeah, that's something that I'm working on. It's just being very strong and standing on the things that I believe in my nose, so that I'm not adding I don't know at the end to make other people feel comfortable. Because if they're feeling uncomfortable, it's not my job to make them feel comfortable or to, you know, dim my light or diminish myself to make somebody else feel big. It's like, no, we can't do that anymore. And so while I was writing this book, I was having this thought, because they do that to Black women all the time. It's like always like are you sure? You know, and so for us to make other people feel comfortable, we kind of leave that gray area so that people won't think that we're being a B word or we're all over the place. And it's like, no, that's not, we have to be strong. And all the women that I look up to are strong, even if they probably had to close the door and cry and get on their knees and just have a fit. But at the end of the day, you have to stand in those things, or you'll never be respected, or you'll never get to the level that you're trying to get to.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I feel like what's so beautiful is how you just mentioned, like, you wish people would ask you about your thoughts, your passions, the things that, you know, you really care about and that you love. And I feel like from that spiel you just gave, that is Songs from the Girls Room. Like, I feel like that is exactly what the story is about. And we see that weaved all throughout the piece. So I just think that's so beautiful. I just had to point that out. But speaking of the story of Songs from the Girls Room, more questions from that. So I know there were specific pieces I wanted to ask you about. There were some bars that we were going to bring and chat about. But speaking of the piece, 102 Conversations, there is the recurring line of, if I can sit down with blank, and then it just goes on. Who is she? Is it you? Is it me? Should the reader fill in the blank? Like, take us through that.
I definitely think the reader should fill in the blank, because at one point there were names that were in there, but I'm like, I think that I would be doing myself and other people a disservice if I put in a name and kind of ended that story there, because it's always changing. We're always going to be shifting and transforming and meeting new people and looking up to new people and wanting to achieve new things. And so that wanting to ask that person or wanting to inquire about how to get to the next level, it will continue to change if you continue to grow. And so, yeah, I just wanted to leave some of the poems and some of those thoughts as open-ended, because poetry is so fluid, I wanted it to be open-ended so that people can fill it in. So it's like when you're reading it and I won't give it to you, who's the first person that pops in your head when you read it? That's a person that you probably are seeking like help from, or that you need to hear from. Sometimes it could be a celebrity. Sometimes it could be somebody in your life, in your community, that you need answers from or you want answers from. And so that is probably the person that's going to complete that poem or that theme for you. And for me, it's always changing. Sometimes it is a Solange, or other times it is my great grandmother or my mother or my sister or a mentor or somebody. And so it's like, sometimes I just feel like, dang, if I could just sit down and talk to this person and see how did they get through it, it would help me. But whatever that thing is that I'm trying to get through, it's always shifting and it's always changing. And I wanted to create pieces that feel timeless, that if you read it today, you could also read it 50 years from now and it may still have that same impact or a different impact in a different way, but it's still serving whoever that reader is.
Yes, for sure. And I felt like as I was reading, I was filling in the blank and I was like, wait, am I supposed to be like, how am I thinking her poem? But I was like, ooh, she ate with that one. She did her thing. And speaking of just this piece, the collection was just beautiful. And I know as a fellow poet, I love bars, right? And I feel like there were some moments from this book where I was like, we're gonna stop and we're gonna have a moment for this bar. And so there were a couple, like I just feel like we're gonna have like a little mini rap genius session.
Okay.
Right? So I'm gonna read the bar because I'm like, oh, this stuck out, this ate, and you just can kind of talk us through what you were thinking, what was the creative, or just like when you wrote it, like, did you know that you were gonna eat so hard? So, and I didn't knock even, I should have, which piece exactly it comes from. But to start, I relinquish the illusion of my sanity today so that my success will find comfort in her scream tomorrow.
Yes, I know what poem that's from. Black Girl Scream. So I wanted to end off that poem with that line because I lose my mind all the time. I have to go off. I have to just get out of my body to get what I need. And a lot of times as Black women, we're not allowed to scream. We're not allowed to act out. We're provoked and we're not allowed to feel emotion. And so for that line, I was basically saying like, hey, to whoever's going to come after me, I'm going to lose my mind today. I'm going to scream. I'm going to act crazy. I'm going to be my full self so that when you come after me, nobody has to question you. Nobody has to think less of you because I already went through the battle for you, you know? And I think that's what a lot of generations did before us. When we look at like a Sonia Sanchez or Nikki Giovanni or like a Maya Angelou and all of these different women who were creating poetry. And now we look at them in high regard, but in their days, there were people who had lots of opinions of them or maybe didn't look at their work in the best light, and they had to really like climb that ladder. And I basically am just saying like, I will take on that role now. Like I'll do the heavy lifting. I'll scream. I'll act crazy. I'll live full in my emotions and people can call me whatever, but I'm doing this for you so that when you do it, you never have to question whether or not you're worthy of being treated like a human being because you decided to express your emotions. So I'll take on that for you.
That is beautiful. And I think just poetry in general or writing, creative writing, is the ability to take all of what you just said and to portray it in just a single line.
Right.
A single bar, like, chef's kiss. Okay.
Thank you.
And this one is Feet Off the Table because I remember specifically this was one of my favorites. I had a lot of favorites. But you said, I built it high to the heavens and scrubbed the pits of hell just to gain the approval of people with no qualifications to judge me because they loved me unconditionally.
Yes. So basically for that line, I was just talking about how I would spend so much time trying to be perfect, because like in my background, like kind of backtracking a little bit, but in my background, like growing up, I always wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be like Beyonce, Destiny's Child. I wanted to be a pop star because they live this glamorous life. They got to sing and I love singing. I love music. I love all those things. And so I just think about how like I was trying so hard to be accepted by my family when they already loved me unconditionally. So it didn't matter if I was a good singer or a good dancer or did certain things, they were going to love me regardless. And so that's really what that line is about and that poem is about, is like having these big dreams and feeling like I'm not getting the appreciation that a fan would give me for my family. But it's like my family, they're not my fans, they're my family, and they're going to love me regardless of what I do. And so like, I don't need to try and conform and be something else for them to treat me like they're my audience, because they're not my audience. You know, I just need to be myself and know that they're accepting me for whatever I want to do and whatever, and the audience that I need or that I want will find me eventually, but I don't have to stretch myself and become something I'm not just so that the people sitting in my living room will praise and worship me when it's not their job to do that, because they're my family. They're going to love me regardless. And even then, when I do have followers and fans and all that, it's not their job to praise and worship me either. Obviously, I want them to love my work and to consume my work. But like having that adolescent mind, I thought that like being loved and appreciated meant that somebody would be obsessed with me and loving me. And so I'd go to these links to try and get that kind of praise when that's not what's going to really fulfill you at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I wonder, because I was gonna ask, is that why the table broke at the end? Because I was like fully in, and then I was like, why did the table break?
Because I wasn't supposed to be up there to begin with. It's like you're not supposed to be on that coffee table. You weren't supposed to be doing that, but it was like I was trying to mirror this profession, and it's like it's not all the grass is not always greener, And so it's like when you get on top of there and you take that, like put yourself on that platform and that podium. It's not always going to be what you want. And it's like, really, for me, that was me saying, like, the ground is where it's at. Being close to the ground, being close to, like, that's really where it's at, instead of trying to be on this high pedestal and podium and, like, do all these things that the people on TV are doing. Because, like, you start watching documentaries, you start seeing people do interviews, and you realize, like, it's not always what you think it is, So, yeah, the coffee table had to break because I wasn't supposed to be up there anyway.
Listen, one thing about it, if you don't humble yourself, something or somebody's going to humble you.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, next bar. When will I know that I've progressed enough if enough has no metric?
Yeah, I think that's a seat for thinking. Basically, it was just like this industry that I'm in, it's not like when you're running a race and you can see who's the winner and who's the loser. It's not like that. It's very fluid. It's like very intangible. You can't touch it. And so you have to really like be in control and decide like what is success for you. And so for me, success is always shifting. It's always changing. It's always transforming and transcending and going into new realms and taking different shapes and form. And so yeah, when I'm sitting down and I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, how do I know when I am satisfied? How do we know when we stop? And that's a question I'm still asking myself to this day, honestly.
Yeah, I think, and that reminds me too a lot of this thing that I got one time. It was just like a little nugget, and it was like, your best is gonna look different every day. And I think I told my last guest this. Maybe it's just gonna come up every episode. But your best is gonna look different every single day because every day is different. Like getting up and getting out of bed today might be my best, but tomorrow I might go write, my next book. Right. And I feel like that line like kind of weaves so beautifully into that idea.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. I feel like this one definitely deserved this moment. We didn't understand how good we had it. No boys to define our bodies and our beauty. No showers to shed our sins because we bathe in tubs of Negro spirituals, nursery rhymes, and floaty toys.
Yeah. So that poem is Blowing Bubbles Under Black Gum Trees. And basically, like, I'm talking about like the summers that I used to have at my great grandmother's house, and how it'd be like me and my siblings and my cousins and my uncles, and we would just spend all day like just playing outside, listening to music, having a good time. And I would really wanted to reflect on like what it was like being a young Black girl in a world where I didn't have to worry about like what my hair looked like or what my skin looked like, because there was nobody there. There were no men to tell me like, oh, I wish you were a little bit curvier, or, she's, comparing us, and all these things that we come into consciousness with once we get older. I wanted to take a moment in the book to really admire that beautifulness of just adolescence, and how a lot of times, like when it comes to the Black story, people like to age us up. They like to say like, oh, that's a young woman. And it'd be a little girl. And it's like, no, that's a child. That's a little girl. And so I wanted to really acknowledge like the beauty before we get into all of these things that the world is going to thrust onto us. There is a silence and a beauty, like a beautiful stillness about just being a young little girl and having other young little girls, like young Black little girls, to be around and to just have fun. And for me, I grew up in the Black South in like Baptist Christian, upbringing. So really, it was just about like having fun and putting on our Sunday dresses and playing with the other little girls and singing in the choir with each other, and just not worrying about if a man loves me or if I'm good enough or if I make enough money. And so I wanted to make sure that I really highlighted that beautifulness of adolescence, because a lot of times they take that away from us way too early.
Absolutely. I feel like the adultification of Black girls in itself is always going to be a thing that we just kind of push, against. And we're like, okay, guys, like, let's just relax here. But I mean,
Right.
documentary after documentary, book after book, article after article, they're going to do it. They still do it. They love to make us grow up. So I thought that line was beautiful. I know it spoke to my inner little girl. I was like, I remember those days. Like,
Right.
exactly what it needed to do. And then I know you
Thank you.
mentioned the idea of like a man loving you. I feel like there was this beautiful bar. Now, these are ones that, feel free to explain if you want to. But I just felt like they needed a moment. Like, this is the line. This is the bar that the poet repeats for the audience to eat it up again. Because it's like, yeah, you heard it and it went hard, but let me say that again. And then, yeah, this was the one. So maybe if I hadn't lacked the confidence to be sure of myself, I wouldn't have spent all this time studying your desire, quietly storing your stories in the library of my mind with hopes of writing our own one day.
Yeah.
That is a mouth. I mean, just wow.
Yeah. So basically, like for me, there have been so many times where I really loved people, but I've only got to love them in my mind. And so I really wanted to highlight that, because like that's a reality for a lot of women, a lot of Black women, where we may be a little bit more introverted when it comes to love, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to things of that nature. And so there's also a beautifulness in that as well, and finding someone who's equally as introverted. And so you think about how, like, a lot of times, like whenever I would talk to people in my community about someone that I may be interested in, automatically their assumption is that I need to get with them or I need to capitalize off of it, because that is the way that people make the most of relationships. But it's not always linear like that. And so I think about how there are some people who I love deeply, but I probably wouldn't be able to love them deeply if I gave it a title, or if I decided, oh yeah, let's just jump into this and let's be boyfriend and girlfriend, or, and so it's like, no, for me, having those hesitations, there is something so amazing that came out of that, because all that time I spent waiting, I was studying that person, I was learning about them so that I could be there for them and show up for them in a way that you can't just talk about, like when you're with somebody who really understands you because they've been studying you, and like from them studying you, they're revealing things about themselves. And so for me, I'm like, not just my own personal love, but just love in general, because I do hope to like write romance novels and really like highlight Black love. I'm like that slow burn trope, that is something that I really enjoy, where it's like you take things a lot slower. You're not just like, oh, this person's attractive, let's get married tomorrow. It's like, no, like we're moving slow, we're just understanding each other, we're watching each other in a way that doesn't feel weird, but it's like when I see you move, there's like a beautifulness about it. Like I'm trying to think of a word to describe it other than like beautifulness, but like it's just so nice to just watch somebody, and then from that you're able to build these really intimate stories with them, because you're not just taking on a role because that is the traditional thing to do. It's like, no, we're crafting this beautiful experience and this beautiful story, but that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have taken a step back and just allowed you to be you in your element.
I love that. That's beautiful. And I guess on the opposite head of that, one that it ate the whole poem. Things to be mindful of is just the bar, the entire piece. But the line where I was like, wait a minute, I gotta put this down because she cooking. Like, and mind you, I broke my plate in half just to be mindful of his grind too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
let me run it back, because you
gotta run it back.
And mind you, I broke my plate in half just to be mindful of his grind too.
Yeah. So that wasn't even a poem. So that's actually a song. So like I was writing that song and I was thinking about how so often women we have to put our stuff on hold for the men in our lives, And so it's like we're always the ones who are considerate, and we're gracious because we love our people and we want to show that love, and we don't want to be too overpowering. But it's like, do you not remember that I did all of these things for you because I care about you and I love you, but what about me, And so it's funny because I had wrote the song and then I was watching Bel-Air, the show, which I'm not caught up on, but I was watching the show Bel-Air, and that's something that the mom literally deals with. And so she's like, she puts her art career on hold so, her husband can work in politics and so her kids can have a great life and so they can do all these things. But like now she's ready to really get back in the field. And it's a problem. It's like, no, just wait. But it's like, you're not considering that, like, I literally, my plate that I was eating off of, I broke it in half. I put it to the side so that you could eat and you could do all these beautiful things. But like, we kind of wait. And it's like, okay, now you got to stand up for yourself and you got to really put yourself first, because if you don't, you never will. And so, yeah, that was just about kind of feeling like a lot of times, and not even in my own personal life, because I don't have that, like in terms of my relationships, I'm only 23, so I've never been married. Like my relationships aren't that extensive, but just wanted to kind of highlight that is a theme that a lot of women do deal with, having to kind of be that rock for somebody else. But like, what happens when the roles are reversed? Are you going to give that same energy? Are you going to give that same, like, support and effort for me, even though you're not recognizing that I've already done that for you? I'm being the perfect example for you and you're not following my lead when I really need it, So I wanted to touch on that because that is a real feeling that a lot of women deal with.
Listen, I mean, just all kinds of, it just brought back so much nostalgia from being in the girls' room and literally hearing some of everything. I'm in everybody's business because in that girls' room, we are all like sisters. We are all family. Like, you never know what you're going to see in the girls' room, who's going to be in the girls' room. But with that being said, and I know, like, speaking about what you were just mentioning with, this poem specifically, what do you think are like the most important things or messages that you want people to take from this work? Like, what do you want people to think, feel, see, remember when they read these poems?
That these themes are universal, and that you may read a poem once and get something from it, and you may put the book down and read the poem again and get something else from it, and to not just be stagnant with it and to not just close it and think that's it. The whole point of the Songs from the Girls' Room is that, like, when you have a CD and you put it in, you can listen to a song over and over and over again, and you can have this experience over and over again. And then that last 100th time you listen to it, it can feel different. And so I want people to allow themselves to grow with the work, to not feel like it's a book that you have to read from beginning to end. If you decide you want to pick the book up on a random Tuesday and flip to page 57 and read that poem only, you can do that. It's a book that I want people to be allowed to just live with and grow with, and hopefully one day somebody will pass it down to like a family member or a friend, and then they'll be able to experience it. But then also that, like, the book it's just a start for me, and hopefully it's the start of other people to have conversations, to maybe write their own poetry or make their own songs, or to create things in print, because books are important. And as we know, like, book publishing, Black women in book publishing were already like underrepresented. And so it's just really important to like keep creating literature, keep experiencing poetry, keep making memories with these physical objects, because they're trying to take it away from us. They're like, oh, just go digital. And then they delete everything that we have on these platforms. And so I hope that when people have the book, that they know that it's not just a cash grab for me. It's not just something where we're like, let's create this and then I'll sell it, make a quick little buck, and then you can just throw it away. Like, no, I want people to really make memories with it. And if they don't, give it to someone else who can, like, I want it to have this circulation in the same way that a CD goes round and round. I want the book to do the same thing for other people. But also, like, in terms of its themes, there's so many different things that are packed in there that I don't even know that people could get from it. And so I want it to have that, like, infinite open possibilities around it.
I love that. And now that you mentioned that Things to Be Mindful of is actually a song, I'm like, I'm the audience would like to hear that. Like, we want to hear that thing on digital so we can play it.
Yes, so that's a plan one of these days, is to like get all the songs. So like, here's a little fact that I've not told anyone, but all the poems are poems that are like written from like top to bottom, and all the songs are written from side to side, in the same sense that a song would play from side to side. So like, you can see the words creating a like a sound wave. And that I came to that conclusion from Philadelphia's former poet laureate. Her name is Aria D. Matthews. I went to a live stream and she was talking about visual poetry, and I kind of knew a little bit about it, but she was talking about how like when she and her peers and her colleagues do visual poetry, they're creating things where when you have the book in your hand, you have to move with it, and it forces you to not just be looking at the words and reading it, but like you got to turn the book the other way, and now your body and your muscles are moving. And so for the songs, I wanted to, you know, propel people to be like, okay, wait, why is it sideways? I got to turn it and I got to see it. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, there's like the same way that the music goes. That's like my little way of doing visual poetry. But the songs from the girls' room, y'all will hear them one of these days, before the end of the year. I'll say that.
Ooh, okay, exclusive. But also, yeah, when I got to the first one where it was sad, I was like, oh, wait a minute, let me.
Right, and it's kind of weird, but it's like now you're like, wait, this feels a little uncomfortable, and it's like, yes, it does feel a little bit uncomfortable, and you got to move, and you got to hold the book in an awkward way, but it's like you'll get used to it, and if you don't, that's fine too. But now you're feeling this emotion where it's not just, oh, I'm going to bring it straight to you. You're just going to read up to down, or like it's just going to be words on a page. Like, no, we're starting to get something that feels a little bit more artistic, a little bit more abstract. And I wanted to incorporate in a way where it didn't feel too overpowering.
Oh, and I think that was done beautifully. Now I cannot wait to go back and like look at it and be like, oh my gosh, this was like chef's kiss, girl, you're mine. Like you're mine. And so speaking of your first book, so obviously, you know, Songs from the Girls Room is out. Make sure y'all go get that. It is beautiful. Poetry lover or not, like you're gonna really just be pulled into this world of all these different themes and these experiences from the girls' room. So your first book, the Black Hair Care book, the photo went viral with you as the Black Marge Simpson, as somebody called it. We want to talk about that. How was that look achieved? And I'm going to see why we talk about it if we can get it pulled up on the screen.
Yeah. So actually that was my second book. And it really came down to, I had a budget of $20. And I was like, how am I going to grasp people's attention for $20? And so there goes the picture. I found this wig on Amazon. And I was like, okay, so I just sat up in my living room and I took pictures with the book. And then I edited the hair to just be really, really tall. And when I did it, I was like, wait, this kind of looks like Marge Simpson. I'm just going to make that the caption because I know that if I say that, it may ruffle a few feathers. People may stop and look, and it is exactly what I wanted it to. But I just wanted to create something that when you were scrolling on Instagram, because Instagram was like my main channel of promotion, that you'd stop and be like, what the heck am I looking at? And hair has always just been something that plays a big role in the themes of my work, because hair is just like a really big thing in my life growing up, especially like for many Black women can agree that hair plays a big role in our image, the way we feel about ourselves, the way we look at ourselves. And because the book is called Black Hair Care and Color, I'm like, I had to go crazy with the hair. So I was like, we're just going to extend the afro all the way through the frame. And hopefully people will stop and be like, okay, what is this happening? And it would lead them to the book.
And that it did. I mean, I think before I knew you or before I followed you, I think I saw that picture and I was like, oh, this is interesting. So the reach is definitely there. What would you say is the hardest part about being a creator or a creative?
Yeah, I would say the hardest part is definitely just figuring out like how to get my feelings out, because being a multidisciplinary artist specifically, the world is literally like there are infinite possibilities, there are infinite mediums that I can create within. So like for a painter, if they're feeling sad or they're feeling happy or feeling any kind of emotions, more than likely they know, let's paint, you know? And so their challenge may be figuring out how to paint. But for me, it's like, okay, if I'm feeling sad and I want to express it, what is that medium going to look like physically? And then how am I going to achieve that? And so I'll say that was probably my most challenging part, even with this book, because I've never created a poetry book before. And I never really considered myself a poet, even though I had poems, even though I was writing songs since I was like 13 years old. It was figuring out like what medium, what is the best way to package these feelings, these thoughts, these emotions, these concepts. And then once I got that figured out, it's really just about like me going crazy and lose my mind for a few months to get it all together. But figuring out what that final product, that tangible thing is going to be is always the most challenging, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, it's beautiful. All of your projects are absolutely like breathtaking. It shows the thoughtfulness and the creativity. It gives us a little bit of insight to what's going on up there. And so kind of on that same line, you're multidisciplinary, so you do a little bit of everything. How does one form of art or creativity inspire another for you? So how do your skills as a writer inspire your work as a visual artist or as a designer of that of a musical artist? Like,
Yeah, it really depends because when I'm doing something, I always have a million ideas that can branch off from it. So, like, even with this book, I'm like, okay, yes, I'm gonna create the book, but I'm like, I want to take a lot of photos. So now I'm thinking about like the photos, or even like if we do vice versa, like I may create some photos. Like, for example, there's a poem called I Foresee in the book, and that's based off of a photo series that I did in the beauty supply store. So like I was looking at those photos and kind of writing from that experience. And then from that experience, I was able to create even more photos that kind of accompany the book. And then now I'm trying to create more like motion and video that go along with those photos or go along with the book. So for me, it's like once I have one medium, I can do whatever I want with it, because like those words could be a voiceover for a short film. And so I'm always thinking about ways to multiply what I'm doing. And that's a concept that I want to explore more with my digital platform, the Solar Lab, because like I kind of have a blog on there where I'll talk about different concepts or do recaps of different projects, just so that other Black young artists like ourselves who have those questions about like, how do you do this? Like physically, how did you do this? And so on that platform, I'll say like, hey, this is what my camera settings were, or like when I did this, I didn't really like this, or like I use this software. And so from that, you can always build on top of it. Like there's always another form or medium to create with. And so for me, it's just about deciding if that makes the most sense. I also use like celebrations as a way, like I always love to celebrate things. So like national holidays, it might be like National Indie Authors Day just passed. And so I'm like, okay, bet we'll post a picture, we'll do something, or we'll take this. And because we know we have like Instagram stories, Instagram reels, YouTube, all these different platforms where you can show different types of art, I'll just be like, okay, I want to show up on this platform. I'm going to take this and I'm going to transfer it over. And so from there, I'm multiplying and creating more things and being that multidisciplinary artist that I claim to be.
claim to be, you are it. I'm like, that sounds like a possibility to me. You are it.
Thank you.
From literally designing a shoe, like the
Yeah.
youngest Black woman to do so, to having your own company and media outlet, essentially, to creating these projects that are shared everywhere. I mean, you are literally walking in it, girl. Like,
Thank you.
really. And I know this is kind of like a big question to ask, being that, again, you're only 23, birthday's coming up, so you're about to be 24 soon, but not even like a quarter of a century yet. But how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, I just want to be remembered for being intentional. You know, I'm always thinking about that. Always thinking about my legacy. And I just want people to remember me for being intentional, but also just being everywhere and being a Renaissance woman. Like when I die, I want people to be like, wow, she was so interesting. She didn't confine herself to one thing. She didn't just take one route because somebody told her like, oh yeah, if you go to an HBCU, you're supposed to get a job. You're supposed to do this. It's like, no, I'm just going to do what I want. And I'm just going to create what I want. And it will make sense or it won't. And that's okay too. That's one thing that I'm starting to really embrace, is like everything doesn't have to be chronological. It doesn't have to make sense, but there is still intentionality behind it. And so I want people to remember me for being intentional, but also creating things that reflect the Black woman experience, because I'm a Black woman. And if I don't create for us, nobody else will, you know? And there'd be so many times where people would be like, well, why don't you create for insert another demographic? And I'm like, because why would I do that? Why would I ignore and neglect my own community for someone else when they could create for themselves and I could create for us? And so it's like, if I don't do it, nobody will. And so I don't want it to be 50, 60 years from now and the Black woman to be non-existent, and for people to be like, oh wow, like we never see Black women in the media, we never see or hear Black women in poetry or books and art, and they're always going to be young Black little girls. And I don't want them to grow up and think that like creating art and being multidisciplinary artists is not a lucrative career, or that it is not something that you can be remembered or paid for, because it is. And so I want people to remember me for that, for, you know, opening up doors and allowing people to live in their full selves, even if that means people don't always understand them in the present.
I absolutely love that. And I feel like the best way they say, if you be the change you wish to see in the world and you got to lead by example, I feel like you are doing
Right.
it. You are forging a path at literally, like, I'm sorry, I keep saying it because I'm just taking it back. But like at 23, you've already accomplished such amazing things. And whether you know it or not, I feel like you do, you seem pretty confident. But if, I just want to pour into you in this moment, but whether you know it or not, like you are becoming a household name. Like when I
Thank
posted the flyer that you were going to be on the show, like people were like, oh, this is great. Like this is perfect. This is like exactly what needs to happen. So thank you for being what you want to see for us. And I can't wait to see many, many, many more years of Arial Robinson and the things that you come up with. So
Thank
I
you.
everybody, what is feeding you right now? What's like a good word or something you've gotten recently that you'd like to pass on to others?
What is feeding me? I would say, so I just posted on Solar Lab about committing to my chaos. And so there's a creator, their Instagram and TikTok is I Understood. And so they just created a video about just embracing confusion and not trying to be this consumable product. And so for me, I've been trying to really step into that and to step into every single one of my passions and my mediums. Even though I do it, it is like this recurring thing. And so, yeah, I would say definitely check out that creator because they create lots of videos on those things that aren't tangible. You know, like everybody's trying to figure out how to create success and they want like tangible steps. But a lot of times it's about like looking in within yourself and really allowing yourself to be whatever it is you want to be in its entirety. And so I would say that creator is definitely feeding me. And like whenever I see their posts, I always feel like so much more full and like passionate to give myself to other people and to kind of like, you know, let that battery drain out and then go back and like get full. So that's one of the things that I've really been like consuming in terms of like media that's really helping me to keep going and stay inspired.
I love that. This conversation has been beautiful. Once again, y'all have to check out Songs from the Girls Room. I mean, check out this artwork because I'm pretty sure, Ariel, you put this together yourself. I know you took the pictures you did. I mean, her man is just amazing. Y'all gotta run and get it. It should be at the bottom of the screen where you can visit her website, her social, and you can also purchase her other books as well. But Ariel, tell them where they can follow you. Tell them about the other things, your other websites and social handles that you have. They can find you at, and then also anything that we have to look forward to.
Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Instagram at I'm.Ariel and at Solar Lab, but that's in my bio at I'm.Ariel. And then I have my website, arialrobinson.com, with all the things that I'm always working on. And then the solarlab.com. On there are like lots of different resources and things. So if you're trying to get inspired or you just need some words or you just want to chat with me, that's a great place to do it. And then what are some projects that I'm working on? New York Fashion Week is in about 10 days. So that's going to be the next time that I like present some new things. So be on the lookout for all of those projects that I'm working on. And it'll be something that I've never done before. So that's exciting.
So very exciting. We're so very proud of you. Thank you for being up here with us. It was so lovely to have you on the platform. Don't forget, y'all, make sure y'all go purchase Songs from the Girls Room. Y'all can also get her other two books, the Modern Day Black Alphabet book and Black Hair Care in Color. And it has been a pleasure. So everybody, this has been another episode of In Creative Color. Keep creating, and Ariel, we'll see what you come up with next.
Yes,
bye, y'all.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 12 lords are leaping,
11 drummers drumming,
10 ladies dancing.
If you're looking for a secure haven within the literary world, you found the perfect organization. Let's make magic together. Our space is specifically designed for African American authors who are passionate about their writings of films and books. It's a platform to stay informed about industry developments. And on Patreon, we'll share exclusive content, valuable resources, and engaging discussions and masterclasses on various subjects, ranging from film and publishing industry trends to wellness and business tips. So if you're ready to dive into this exciting community, become a member now. Welcome to our literary haven where creativity knows no bounds. Let's make magic together.
Hey y'all, I am Jasmine Bunch, but now and forever to be known as your fave, Jazzonfire. And I am one of the newest hosts of the Sunday Craft Chats. Catch me every fourth Sunday hosting in creative color. Can't wait to see y'all there.